I'm eager and curious to hear more about your work. So thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be with you.
You bet. So you were in the World Bank within about 20 years. You've been talking about the massive fraud and collusion within the banking system, and of course the World Bank in specifics. Why don't we just talk a little bit about your path, I guess, first here, kind of set the framework a little bit, what you've been through, and when you decided to speak out, Karen.
Yes. Well, I didn't ever not speak out. It's just relatively recently that I've gotten through the mainstream, not at all through the mainstream media, through the alternative media. And that's, I think, the biggest conclusion for your listeners to take away, that there is very active censorship, because the issues that I'm reporting, and I'm working with a group of whistleblowers inside the World Bank. And after I was fired illegally, I've been joined by whistleblowers all over the world. So we're basically a network of whistleblowers. We're all reporting the same thing: massive, massive, massive corruption in the financial sector. So I can tell you, when I started out, I had no idea of the depth of the corruption. But what we're doing is we are uncovering the cover-up. There has been a cover-up of this corruption that we're talking about, and I can describe it at great length to you. The function of our whistleblowers group is just like in The Wizard of Oz, Toto the dog that pulls aside the curtain. The whistleblowers working collectively have exposed this corruption, and what you now have is you have this secret world of corruption that didn't think it was going to be exposed, just like the wizard who kept pointing to the big projection screen, saying, don't look at what's going on behind this irrelevant curtain, look up at the screen. The screen is what the mainstream media is telling people. It's all propaganda and lies. And I didn't realize that the corruption inside the World Bank was actually caused by the corruption outside the World Bank. That's a no-brainer, but at the time, right, I just didn't know that we had a secret group of corrupt companies that thought they owned the world. And that's what we're up against. But I'm happy to tell people that all of the countries of the world have band together, formed a coalition, and we are now taking back the world from that corrupt bunch. And who is that corrupt bunch? It's described very, very accurately by three mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology, who modeled the 43,000 transnational companies on the capital markets. And what they found out was a surprise. They found out that all of the financial institutions are actually one international institution. They call it a network of control. What this sneaky group did was they took the same directors and put them on the boards of all the companies. That's called interlocking directors. And so this group has grabbed secret control of the 40% of the net worth of all of the companies traded on the capital markets and 60% of their annual earnings. After I was fired, I found out that one of the main functions of the World Bank and the IMF, you know, these two organizations are really, for all practical purposes, just one organization.
Right.
They're across the street from each other, and there's a board of governors, which is the ministers of finance of all the member countries. And those ministers of finance gather together twice a year, plus there's a group of 25 ministers of finance that meet and consult with each other on an ongoing basis. And so the answer is that, yes, there was always a secret hidden agenda, but at the same time, it is a convening party. And it is a structure that the people of the earth who want to clean up this corruption in the financial system. And it is a matter of whether or not we're going to continue with Western civilization. We're on the edge. Because when I started out, I was just doing what a lawyer inside an entity that issues bonds on the capital markets, because that's what the World Bank does. It issues $180 billion worth of bonds all over the place, denominated in all the currencies of the world. It takes the money from the people who buy those bonds and it trades on the capital markets, earns money. That's how the World Bank finances its budget. So I was trying to correct the financial information. That was my job as a lawyer inside the World Bank legal department. And the laws for financial disclosure are cut and dry. They're very clear. And so I have used those laws as a scaffolding to clean up the corruption that we're going to be describing. So that's one of the hardest jobs that I have when I'm talking to people on the radio. They think I'm a whistleblower like, Snowden or anybody else. But I'm actually not a whistleblower. I'm a sting operation.
Explain that a little bit.
Me and the World Bank whistleblowers are a sting operation, and we are enforcing the securities laws, because when there's a cover-up and the financial statements are inaccurate, the people who own this institution have got to do something. And so I have been going to all of the governments of the world, including in the United States. I've been going to all of the state governments because they are obligated to protect the people that live in their state. So I'm not just working on the federal level in the United States, and I'm not just working in the United States, I'm working in all of the countries and all of the securities entities at the same time. There is more wealth in the world than people know about. And when the World Bank and the IMF were created, they were given a role in that wealth, as supervising that wealth. And we're using that role to take back our world and our wealth. And we're going to prevent all of the currencies of the world that are about to crash deliberately. There is this group that has the network of control that you see on the capital markets. Think of an onion, and I've been going with the rest of the whistleblowers. We've been getting to the core of this onion. This group has not had it's had its own ideas about what was supposed to happen. But as the coalition began to coalesce, things started happening differently from what that group is used to. So when Jacek Kugler, who's the political scientist who came to me in 2004 with the power transition model, he said, "Karen, we have 5 years to prevent nuclear war in the Middle East." That was Syria. The UK Parliament refused to engage in that supposed war. This is the first time that we have rejected a bankers' war. So you can start to see how this coalition is working. I'll also tell you about another thing that was supposed to happen that did not happen. And that is on the 8th of October, there was supposed to be a nuclear device detonated on Charleston. So there would be massive panic and the bankers could grab control. That didn't happen either, because the 3 military entities that are the strongest, the Chinese, the United States, and the Russians, understand the coalition. Don't forget, I have been writing to all of these countries on a, in some cases, it's a daily basis. And they know of the existence of this coalition. I've been on Russia television today 3 times. Yeah. And, I'm starting to get through to the people who can understand what it is that's happening behind the scenes. But I have been writing to the attorneys general in the United States for 3 years. And if you go to my website, you can see the correspondence. And I have been telling them about the formation of the coalitions, what to watch out for. It is very, very loose. And I think if you were to, I think the best way to understand it is to, I can give you one example. There is now a 4th credit rating agency that's owned by the Russian and Chinese. And that is serving as a very strong incentive to get rid of this corruption, because the U.S. credit rating has now been downgraded by the Chinese. It started out being downgraded by Standard & Poor's, and then the Attorney General in the United States, Eric Holder, sued Standard & Poor's. But I started writing the credit rating agencies when a UK lawyer advised me to do this. I had gone to the UK Parliament, and I guess this lawyer felt that it wasn't fair for the UK to have to shoulder the whole burden. And when I say the UK, it's, these countries are not monolithic. There are forces that are fighting the corruption, and there are forces that have been totally co-opted, and the way they act is treasonous to the interests of the people in those countries. And you can rank the countries in degree of the control that they're under, or the degree of freedom that they have. But the group, I'll tell you who the group is that's behind that network of control.
Here's where it gets crazy.
It's the Jesuits. And there's also some groups behind them, but we're still working among the coalition to understand precisely who those groups are. And if I get out and start telling you, you won't listen to the rest of it. People are advising me not to speak about who's behind the Jesuits.
Why not? No, I think you should definitely. I mean, here's the opportunity to really get to the core of it. So why not? Give us a little tidbit.
Okay, then let me tell you what I heard. I'll quote the person who gave me that information, and I'll tell you how we're trying to verify it. Okay?
All right.
This is a neurologist who, by the way, noticed that somebody who had the same theory, and I wish I could remember his name, but anyway, he died a sudden death at the age of 34. What is the theory? If you look at the picture of Akhenaten and his daughters, the pharaohs, they had these huge headdresses. That was to hide their large skulls. They're hominids. They're not human beings. They're very, very smart. They're not creative. They're mathematical. And they had a much stronger force in the earlier Ice Age. And one of the things that this scientist, his name is Edward Spencer, is talking about, there are a lot of museums that have skulls of these, some people call them coneheads by slang. Some people say it's more than one species. It's pretty clear that group is not able to, they may produce offspring in mating with female humans, but that offspring is not fertile, or we would see more of these hominids. And they have been, making themselves scarce. But when Edward was giving me all this information, I shared it with a man in Portugal who went and had a meeting with a bank, and he sent us an email the next day and said that there was a big skull person with bright blue eyes at the meeting of that bank. This person, the bank had made some improper loans to his father, and so he was meeting with the bank about those improper loans. And he said, did I think that our emails had been read, and were these hominids deliberately showing themselves to us now? There's another person who said she saw some of them running around in Egypt. But if you look at the statues, you see all these big headdresses, and then there are some other times when people show up with these improbable headdresses. And you also see them in the Vatican, by the way. Those crazy, I forget what you call them, that the people in the Vatican wear. That would also hide those big skulls.
Well, interesting. That takes things in a bit of a different direction. So you're basically saying that these beings, whatever they really are then, maybe not human hominids. We've talked about elongated skulls and other oddities before on the program, so we're familiar with it in that regard. But you're basically saying that that's the power behind the throne in this case.
Yes, and when people talk about extraterrestrials, that started happening when there was a technology developed to make suggestions inside people's brains. So people who thought that they were being abducted, something happened to them, but the experiences that they felt as being real were things that were that they didn't actually experience, but that that technology was able to suggest to them so that they had vivid memories of things that never actually happened. That technology exists. It's very secret.